Hello, my name is Vsevolod Leonov, developer evangelist, Russia and CIS. You, my friends, can call me Seva, and I'm always open to communications. Just drop me a line or comment my posts. Today, within the 30 minutes, we'll make a plan and start doing quite a perspective mobile app with Delphi for the following submission to app stores. It means the project should be interesting. It can be money, fun, or some humanitarian functions.
You can find a new idea everywhere, and with Delphi you can easily cover the most popular platforms. But new platforms, in turn, do stimulate you to generate new ideas. Mobile is not only fast-growing, but the most inspiring platform. This is Delphi progress in action. And on my own example, we'll set a task, pre-model, and implement it with a TMobile 3D component in Delphi project. In the end, we'll give some business context to the idea and the project itself.
At the moment, we can say Delphi is a very hot technology, and your Delphi skills, knowledge of this wonderful language are very promising and actual. Start your mobile now. After XE5, people ask me, Delphi 4 for Android is cool, what about iOS? This train is so fast that someone misses the milestones. Main idea, one project, single code base, Android and iOS at the same time. So, if you are a bit missing our progress, please find the previous code rage 7. There are many good ideas in there. Previously, I demonstrated simple tablet iPad application to solve some engineering problems on site. After XE5, the project is well ported on Windows, Mac, iOS and now Android. I can now make 3D models with this app on 4 platforms. I model stairs at early stage of the project to avoid mistakes, which can be very critical. The codebase is the same in 3D part. The migration from the original desktop Delphi project needed only remaking the controls. For example, zooming operations on tablets should be done with gestures rather than mouse wheel. The 3D model is very well scalable and seamlessly fits the different screen size from desktop to tablet. Use T-Viewport 3D and proper alignment. The same is true for another mobile game app. When migrating from XE4 and pure iOS application to XE5 and Android version, I had to change the project. The point is that Android-based devices are not generally so strong in rendering capabilities. In mobile 3D apps for Android, we should use the only source of light, T-Light component. I could keep the iOS version intact with 4 lights and T-Light material source components for faces. But I decided to preserve the unity of the codebase for both iOS and Android projects. So I simplified the initial model, which now uses the only T-Light. It now requires T-color material source. It's more simple model for coloring, as the plain color is applied to a spatial body. Please look to the right. For this particular case, it's alright. The cube model is multi-platform. The codebase is exactly the same. But now let's do a fresh new project. It's easy to find a productive idea. Turn around. Typically, mobile apps are designed simply for consumption of the content and just expose some data. We'll take this idea in dynamics. But the content generation should be done somewhere. Of course, using desktop systems. So the same code base is important not only across the mobile platforms. In ideal case, we have the same project group in Delphi and separate mobile desktop projects, which share the business logic. Sharing the code for 3D models works fine either. A Delphi friend of mine, a developer with more than 10 years of experience, when I asked him about his ideas, answered this way: I am an old school developer. I'd better play with my kids rather than play with mobile. Please, don't be chained to a ball. Don't chain yourself to desktop solutions. Don't limit yourself to grids and SQL queries. In addition, business data looks also great on mobile. Now we'll set a combined task for us to start using 3D, for kids to be smarter, and maybe for business purposes. The goal of the project will be purely humanitarian, for kids, for wireless generation. 30 minutes is actually not enough to complete the job, but it's enough to have a progress. The task appeared when I asked my son to help me in assembling some furniture. And he's 11, he's unable to hold a screwdriver. He's 90 level in an online game and fast mouse clicker, but how will he live without basic handwork skills? At many Russian schools, this kind of playing set is used, and I bought it. 30 years ago, in former USSR, we had exactly the same. I deliberately proposed this old-fashioned play set to my son, because it's the closest to real screws, nuts, bolts, clamps, etc. There are real geeks who assemble big structures. How can you make the same object without a manual? Even a simple example needs attention and accuracy. Paper manuals vary from primitive to colorful schematics, but simple structures are not interesting, while complicated ones really need huge paper descriptions. So I decided to make an interactive 3D manual with step-by-step visual and self-explanatory graphics, of course in form of tablet app. I have already done similar project, some kind of demo. It happened to be useless as Lego sets are well illustrated enough and Lego models are simpler. From the viewpoint of Delphi, the blocks were built up using T-cube and T-cylinder ready primitives. Very trivial. Now look here, a real model versus virtual 3D ones with platform FL3D. I can rotate, hide some parts, make them semi-transparent, add animation, etc. Of course, there are no such ready 3D bodies in FM, but we can easily make whatever we want. One more reason for me to do this project. One of our customers, Vladimir Istomin, once asked in my blog how to use TMobile 3D properly. I explored the subject. Vladimir, if you are online, I'll have a pleasure to share the results, tips and tricks. We'll use some third-party external 3D editor to pre-build the model for parts. Then we will upload external models in TMobile 3D components, of course within the Delphi project. If we have time, we'll discuss the strategy to how to develop a project into a big, fully functional system. Some developers don't like our FM3D. 3D is not so simple. Believe me, I am a real PhD in 3D CAD systems with AI. But Delphi can do things. We need just to elaborate good practice and find convenient methods to achieve the goal. Let's cook FM3D with a TModel 3D component. 3D model is represented by a collection of GMesh objects. Previously, I touched the subject and explained how GMesh works. You can find the tutorial on my blog. In addition, you can play with a single GMesh component in Delphi. It's a good experience. I selected Google Sketchup as an external 3D editor. They say it's very powerful. Maybe for me it's a drawing tool. Please don't think I somehow promote this particular tool. The only reason I'm showing it is to help you pre-model spatial bodies. You can select the other, which might be different in all meanings. In addition, read carefully license agreement of any products you use. Now I am drawing a rectangle, then use special tool to smooth the corners. It's not the exact procedure. I clipped some intermediate steps to make the video more dynamic. You can draw some objects and the Sketchup is the exact name, because some like drawing on a piece of a paper with some pencil. I'm making guidelines, and then I can draw some holes in this plate of metal. After I've done my holes, or maybe circles, I can then use the extrude tool, and it looks like a real metal thing. Then holes using the same tool. Google SketchUp has a lot of very simple tutorials, so our goal is to manage within 30 minutes. Yes, it's an ideal case, but the tutorials for Google SketchUp, the basic ones, they are 4 tutorials of 15 minutes each. So in an hour, if you can do 3D, you'll be very mighty with SketchUp. We can export the model in OBJ or DAE format. Both formats are acceptable for Delphi or TMobile 3D component and in FM, so you can export like this or like that. Later on we'll discuss what's the best way. So once again, Google SketchUp has its own format of storing graphics, 3D graphics, and we'll exporting the 3D model in OBJ and DAE format. Now go to Delphi. In Delphi, I always recommend to start from desktop application, because in mobile application you have a very small screen size, not good to plan or to train your 3D skills. So let's start with FireMonkey mobile application, and please basically use HD FireMonkey application. Then we have a plain 2D form, and if you want to have a window into a 3D world, you need to add a special component. It's called the viewport 3D. You can easily combine 2D with 3D if you are using the viewport 3D components and the panel to locate 2D controls like buttons, edits, checkboxes, etc. Then we need to align the panel to the left and the viewport to client. Then we can add the basic elements of 3D scene like T-light. T-light should be positioned to -10, for example, and the basic component like T-dummy. Now we are ready to locate the 3D model component and load the pre-built 3D model in Google SketchUp, both in OBJ or DAE formats. Okay, let's add our T-model 3D component. It is parented to dummy 1. Dummy 1 is good to rotate, to have a centralized gate to all the objects in the scene, to rotate them. Okay, we have the T-model 3D and the cornerstone of all the component, mesh collection. Mesh collection, it's the property to load the external ready model, once again both in DAE or OBJ format. If we are loading the OBJ format, like this OBJ format, what we'll have nothing, because we need to scale. This track bar is used for scaling the model. Okay, so we have this on the form, and please pay attention to a single model 3D Mat01. It's the material component. It is used for the model to have some color. You can change the color from white to maybe spring green. Yes, and do remember that source of light is directional. So if you want to have better reflection, you can rotate it a little, for example, around x-axis. Yes, maybe this way, maybe this way. No, not this way, this way. Okay, 45 is okay. Maybe 0. When we change the scale during uploading, when uploading the model from the file, like this, we have changed the property scale. Yes, 4. So if you want to have the relevant model, and if you are going to load many models, you should keep the scale as some definite number across all the models in the project. Although Delphi component TMobile 3D can load data from both OBJ and DAE files, my tests showed that I'd prefer using DAE models to avoid some errors.
So if we load the model from OBJ file like this, rescale to make it visible, you can see that some errors in 3D. There are some errors in 3D, so it's better to export complicated parts in DAE format, like this. So now we have quite an okay, I'll take the simpler, it's quite an okay model. We can change the scale and make it bigger. In this case we can change the scale of T-dummy, or maybe use the camera in runtime. Then we can slowly rotate. Yes, it's a very nice model. The main difference from the viewpoint of Delphi that in DAE format we have not the only but many components for material. In our case, there are 4 of them, because we have one main detail and 3 holes. For example, if we change the color of the first, you'll see that from maybe red, you see that not all the color is changed, but the color of one hole. Okay.
Let's now select all the 4 materials with the Shift key and change all the materials at once, from maybe to purple, for example, or a bit lighter, like olive. Okay, let's add another part and see how the components will change. I'm taking T-dummy component, set it back to normal view, then move the first model to the right to 5 points, then I select T-dummy and another model 3D on the form, move it to -5 to the left, and then load another, for example, another. like this, another DAE file. That's okay. We remember that we should unify all the scale factor for all the details in this scene. And once again, we have not the only but many materials, but nevertheless we can select them all and change the color from white to some different, like maybe blue, this time blue. And again we can use dummy to rotate all this scene, maybe interactively. That's okay, interactively, or using object inspector. I prefer using object inspector because you can always come back to normal view. Unfortunately, at the moment you can't change the materials for a model, but and if you are going to add many models, you will have many and more materials. But there are some ways how to avoid this large amount of additional components. We can simply select a component and copy it. For example, if you need to have many similar models in your scene, we have copied the component in memory and then select the dummy as a parent and then paste. In this case, we have one more model. We can change their position, for example, -3, and in this case we have two models and the same set of materials. Then we can once again add another model like 5 or 3y coordinate. If we change the materials, all the three models will change the color simultaneously. We can rotate the scene with models all together. The point is that 3D Designer in Delphi IDE is very simple, and it is not designed for making complicated 3D scenes. It's not a 3D editor indeed, but you can change the materials in runtime. Let's see how will it be. Let's do this in runtime. First, in design time, we are adding light material source and assign some pink color to it. Then we're going to set a 2D button on the panel. First, let's run and see what we have in design time. The compilation won't take much time. So the ready application, and we plan to change the color of the top component by replacing the links to the materials to a new one. Unfortunately, all the meshes building up the model are stored in the single array mesh collection. So in design time it's impossible to distinguish and assign some part of this array to one material and another part of the array to another material. In runtime it's doable. Let's write a simple code. The code is rather simple. We should navigate through the mesh collections. For a particular 3D model, we need I and some temporary mesh reference. For low indexes, it's model 3D 3 mesh collection. That's okay. To high, the same. Mesh collection, index I, material source, it's our newborn light material source. After all these iterations, we need to repaint Let's go further and teach our program to dynamically during runtime load models from a file. It's not very tricky, but there is some hack that we'll consider. So first, let's add an open dialog and a special button. Oh, oops, wrong pocket. Add a button onto the panel and change the text to load from file. Load. So double click. So let's do some trivial stuff, typical for desktop applications, of course. Model, let it be the first model. Load from file. Open dialog 1, file name as usual. Then we need what? Nothing. Let's run the application. Let's run the application and change the material of the second model. Okay, it's now pink. That's alright. What will happen if we delete the design time materials? This, and this. It's not some indication of an error. It's by default the plain color material is created by default and assigned. So it's not the danger. It's only the plain material. But what will happen if we run the application in runtime, change the material for this one? I guess we'll have a positive result. Error? That's okay. So after making the initial composition, you can delete all the materials you don't need, and initially when loading the application, change dynamically the material for all the models to the only source. We are ready to load the model from the file. DAE file. Nothing happened. Also sad, we need some hack, but it will take only some seconds. Let's do it. Go down to the code, and in the users section we should manually add DAE importer unit. If we are going to load the file in OBJ, in this case we need to use fmx obj importer file. And let's try again. Load from file after this little hack. DAE file. Okay, yes, our application now can load models from file. Let me show you the project with the real model I presented earlier for some real-life model. It's a kid's model, but it's very useful. Of course, it's not 30 minutes. It took me more time. I made the model during Astana. Astana is the capital of Kazakhstan. I was in a jury this weekend for Astana hackathon, and I was doing some stuff for this Codrage session. This 3D model and with the transparency of the body part. This less than 30 minutes you've got. Sketchup is okay for pre-modeling, but you can use the other tool. DAE is more stable format. Sometimes if you miss some meshes, which you get from intersection operation in SketchUp, you need to redraw them manually in SketchUp. I guess it's SketchUp, not Delphi. So test the models in Delphi and correct them in SketchUp then. The most important property is TMesh collection. After loading both in design and runtime, don't forget to change the scale property, especially if you have an empty TMobile 3D component with 0 scale values initially. Then you can have many materials. Don't worry, we can reduce their number later. Please don't think your IDE 3D Designer in Delphi is a tool for modeling. It's a tool to lay out the scene, while the real scene is composed in runtime. You know how to work with models dynamically in code. The full-scale project based on our 30-minute session can be developed as to make desktop system for building the full set of structures from paper manuals. It's a question of 1 to 2 days. Store the variants in DB. It's easy. We need to store the element ID and its spatial coordinates X, Y, Z and rotation angles. Mobile version on the same codebase simply exposes the models to the students with hide show functionality plus animation plus step-by-step routine. Mobile app can be used to photo and share the results using social media. See our code snippets for that. Camera, share sheet, etc. The last question to ask. Seva, we have been looking at desktop app all this session. What about Android? Don't tell us words. Show us hardware with mobile app. Easy. You can now see iPad simulator, Mac OS, real iPhone, Windows, and of course Android Nexus 7, real device. Okay, Seva, now we can trust you. The very last question. Why on mobile the same color is used for all the parts? Yes, because on mobile we need to set material in onCreate event. But we already can do this in one cycle for all meshes in mesh collection property. Thank you for your attention. The code is the same, so I didn't implement complicated techniques like inheritance of forms or sharing the codes across the project. I simply copy and paste the whole TV port from desktop to mobile project. It's not the optimal solution, but if someone wants to have some experience and play with 3D models on mobile, it's very perspective direction, because the consumption of content like paper manuals or maybe some different things, very perspective and well paid. Exactly, if we are taking into account the cross-platform Android and iOS at once. So in this case, I can recommend that first you should use the desktop project to master your skills. After this, it's easy to implement mobile interface, but first it's a recommendation to start with the desktop, because if we choose the mobile project, we should either select smartphone or tablet form. Smartphone is too small, tablet is too big for my resolution, for example. But for if we select the iPad design, it will be too big. So first start playing with the desktop application, because it's easy to debug, to run on Windows machine, but it then can be smoothly transported to mobile version. But indeed, the desktop, I do believe that at the moment the desktop plus mobile solution is the best way, because the generation of the content, it's a 100% desktop application. For consumption, it's a mobile version, something like that. So if you are going to make some special 3D editor to pre-built models or compose models for later consumption on mobile, start with desktop. On mobile, you can rotate, you can change the model, the view of the model, but exactly I try to play with the mobile version, like small CAD system, not my, but third-party mobile version, mobile front end for CAD systems. It's not very good. So only to see and make some basic operation like rotation and zooming.
Yeah, there was Tom made a comment about SketchUp is actually very cool, very easy and useful, and 3D objects come into XE5 very easily, a great option for this kind of thing. And then
yes, it's a question of personal requirements. Maybe for me, SketchUp it's a good product regarding this particular project. If we're talking about not sketching up, but making some industrial construction, maybe some special CAD systems like SolidWorks. I can't recommend some exactly. Maybe better, but SketchUp do have errors if we are talking of complicated geometry, or maybe not SketchUp, but the tool chain like FM3D and SketchUp. It's not very perfect sometimes, but all the problems you can solve. Like I did, it's just some time of mastering your skills, nothing else.
And then one of the questions I always get asked is it better to start with a 2D app and put a viewport 3D? Is it better to start with a 3D app and use a T-layer 3D to put your 2D UI components on?
This question is very important. I especially discussed this question with Eugene, one of the FM architects, and it's a really important question, and it depends on many things, like the complexity, what GPU-based library will be used in rendering. But basically, I don't know exactly, I don't remember exactly, but it is recorded in my webinar with Eugene. But basically, it's okay to use 2D initial. It may be a bit more productive to use 2D form with the T viewport. So, in other words, don't care if you are talking about the performance. Don't care about 3D or 2D form with the T viewport 3D component on this. But from my personal viewpoint, it's more simpler if we're talking about red tool like Delphi to use 2D form and then place T viewport and have special HD panel to locate the components. Okay, you can start with 3D form and locate the T-layer 3D component and change the projection from camera to desktop. Yes, you know, I know by heart. So, and use the same, but from the viewpoint of making interface, especially if you are not well experienced in 3D, it's more convenient to start with HD form and then panel and use as viewport like window through a plain wall into 3D world. And in my blog, maybe 2 years ago, I played with some viewports on the same form. The result is very interesting. So in this case, in the case of basic 3D form, you can have a big 3D scene. But sometimes, especially if you are doing some complicated CAD system, it's good to have some viewports from exposing the model from different viewpoints. Yes, rather than one big, it's not a 3D game, of course. So it's more productive and more convenient to start with HD form.
And people are always wondering what's running on the underneath engine as it relates to 3D and FM, and it depends on which platform you're targeting, right? Whether it's Windows versus Mac versus iOS and Android. Can you just explain DirectX versus OpenGL?
Yes. Yes, for Windows, so I can refer to the FM architects. On Windows, we have DirectX, Direct 3D engine, GPU library. On Mac, we have OpenGL, and on mobile devices, we have OpenGL ES version. And the very frequently asked question is why Embarcadero uses Direct 3D on Windows machine. It's maybe it's for us it would be more simple to have OpenGL on Windows and OpenGL on Mac machine. But in this case, I'm not going to tell some maybe impolite things, but DirectX is the native Microsoft Windows platform, so to have less limitations, or maybe to be more to achieve higher performance, it's great to have DirectX as native Microsoft Windows GPU-based platform we're using.
Which SketchUp version were you using? I know there's basic SketchUp and then there's SketchUp Pro, right? Is there?
Yes, I mentioned that you should be very careful when reading license agreement for Embarcadero products, yes, and Google SketchUp products. I personally, I use the basic free version because I'm not doing to make some commercial product. I explored Google SketchUp and Delphi to have some understanding about how it works. But now I do think about purchasing Pro version not to be limited by some restrictions.
Yep. And SketchUp Pro comes with an 8-hour trial period. You can do quite a bit. I use it just for exporting models back and forth, converting models, and I can do a lot of that in 8 hours. Do you have a suggestion for how people can get started in 3D and FM?
To get started, I guess, David, I guess you made a very good short videos about getting started in 3D.
Yep.
Not to use, so just to start from simple bodies like cones, like cylinders, like spheres, and play with components. So I mentioned that Delphi IDE is not a 3D editor, so it is very effective if you learn FireMonkey 3D in design time and runtime later on. So it's okay to use only Delphi and watch simple videos like you did. Yeah. It's okay to start. Then you can select some 3D editor and go on, maybe like I do.
Yep. When you're using a bitmap texture, can you use all the formats that FM supports? JPEG, PNG, BMP?
Oh, I mentioned in my video when I explained how 2D textures are applied on 3D objects. I don't remember exactly, but to tell the truth, it's some kind of holy war, because now there are a lot of image 2D editors, free editors. So I'm using Irfan View. I can easily make one-click conversion from one format to another format. So, and I can can program a Delphi small application to convert the whole bunch of JPEGs into PNG, maybe 2 and 4. I don't remember, but it's not a problem indeed.
Then somebody wanted to know if they could do 3D photos. I don't think we have a T-image 3D for putting an image, but that's not a 3D image, right?
Yes, guys, excuse me. I made a simple application about panorama view, and I took a San Francisco photo, panorama view, like making from plates or just to apply texture to semi-cylinder. Please go to my blog, and if you want some more instruction, please drop me a line, and I will make another blog post for other guys to answer publicly to your question. It's okay.
Yep, and I put it's just first name dot last name. Everybody knows Vsevolod, how to pronounce that. I'd just say Seva, but it's I'm putting it in here Vsevolod.Leonov at Embarcadero.com.
Oh, yes, I'm suffering in Russia also. In Russia also, I'm suffering from the length of my name.
And let's see, is it possible to import STL mesh files? We support, for T-Model 3D, it's DAE, OBJ, ASC, and we had an example, I don't know if it's still there, for importing a 3DS, but that was done as an example.
Yeah, I think it's doable, but Delphi and Delphi-based application, they are designed for consumption, external format, not for export. I do believe. Otherwise, you should program some industrial format, or maybe find a third party, or maybe you should make this component and be our technological partner. But Delphi is a general purpose IDE, and the task is very specific.
Yep. Okay, we're near the top of the hour, Seva. There's a few other questions you might be able to answer in the Q&A log. Seva, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Z-axis, just real quickly, positive Z is into the screen and negative Z is towards your face, right?
Negative Z, yes. Pavel Glovatsky last Code Rage 7 made a wonderful presentation. He depicted the using FireMonkey, the FM platform, excuse me. Yeah, the axis, and not to explain, but show how axes are directed.
But positive X to the right, positive Y down, positive Z into the screen if you're looking at a screen, and negative Z towards your face. That's the simplest way that I know how to deal with it. There's this right hand orientation, left hand twisting it around. I just say into your face is negative Z. And FireMonkey has its own coordinate system, and then it converts it to the underlying on the different platforms to the right stuff. So you don't have to worry. Okay, Seva, thank you very much.